What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Go Lead Everything podcast. Phil Swanson here. Awesome guest today. My head coach for most of my time at Wayne State University and still fearless leader of the Wayne State University Warrior baseball team, Ryan Kelley, is on the show today. Hey, RK, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Phil. It's always amazing and awesome to reconnect with a great leader and a former Warrior, someone that represented the school with distinction on and off the field. Excited to be with you on this afternoon.
And I'm excited to be with you, RK. Had an awesome time with you at Wayne, and you sure did a lot for me in my career. And, understanding the value of that network and understanding that you see the value in it. I wanted to talk to you today and really glean some leadership insights from you. I know you've influenced a lot of individuals over the years, and you were a baseball player yourself, so wanted to kind of go back and maybe kick it off with you telling a little bit of your story of how you played through college and ultimately ended up coaching at Wayne State.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm from Michigan. I grew up in Northville, Michigan, and I grew up in that community because my mother was a harness horse jockey. She raced horses and trained race horses. And there's a track that's still in Northville. It's not as used as extensively as it was when I was growing up, but it's called Northville Downs. And while we were still looking for a house, my mother was racing horses. My father and my mother and I lived at the racetrack in a room about the size of a dorm room when I was just a youngster. But eventually got a house near the track, and I grew up playing in the Little League system there. And the Little League system really helped introduce me to leadership and team and fun and sport, organized sport. And that ultimately led me to continue to develop my skills and the passion for the game. And the Tigers were really good during that era. And it was a time where I embraced the game of baseball and continued moving forward. And I played some travel ball. I actually went to Dearborn Divine Child High School, where I graduated from, and played with some amazing teammates, had a great coaching staff, and opportunities presented itself where we were competitive, and it gave me a position to succeed academically and athletically, to ultimately be recruited. And going through the recruiting system, I chose to go to University of Michigan, where I was a student athlete there in the baseball program. And that's where a lot of my transition really developed and evolved as a student athlete into ultimately what led to my graduation, team success there, but into my coaching endeavors with Wayne State University. And great time at Michigan, amazing teammates that I still consider brothers and family to this day. And part of my network, you talked about the word network, and it was an amazing experience. And from my transition of baseball at the college level, I dabbled a little bit working in sport. I actually immediately went into some radio broadcasting. I was asked to do the color commentary for Michigan baseball on the radio just after my playing days. So about a year and a half, I did that. Got an internship with the Lions in the same realm. Really had a desire to work in sport because sport gave so much to me. And it was a medium for my academic and personal and network and growth and so forth. And I was close to Wayne State. My father had attended Wayne State, and he actually used to take me to Wayne State when I was a kid to go to the library there, and if I had to work on a science project or do some research or just study, he would take me down to the Wayne State Library. And we would dabble between Wayne State's library and the Detroit Public Library right on Cass Avenue. And I grew a real affinity for Wayne State even as a youngster. And so I decided to get my master's degree, and I went to Wayne State, and it led to an opportunity to coach as well under the direction of Jay Alexander at the time. And I've been happy to be there ever since.
Man, that's awesome. Super cool story. I know I was always told you'll meet your best friends in college, and that's rung true for me. I met some really great people in my time at Wayne, including yourself. And I'm curious, sounds like you kind of fell into coaching a little bit. Was coaching something you aspire to, or how did you kind of,
to be honest with you, I knew how valuable the game of baseball and organized sport was for me, whether it was football, basketball, baseball, the sports I mainly played through high school, and the connections I made with the coaches, the teammates, and it was a real medium for me to understand the importance of academics and education. And through sport, I garnered a lot of that value in addition to what my family had taught me. And I knew how powerful it was for me and my growth. And I always had a vision at some point in my college tenure, my undergraduate tenure, I wanted to continue working in sport and foster those ideals and help present it to the next generation of a student athlete. And I didn't know if coaching was the answer. I always had a vision of maybe being like a high school athletic director and coach high school baseball.
Sure.
Where I could impact a department of student athletes at the high school level. It's such a powerful time being in high school and making those decisions about your future. And that was a vision of mine. It still continued as a vision when I started my master's work at Wayne State University. But coaching and building relationships with the staff, administration there, but ultimately the student athletes that wore the green and gold, still to this day, that was something that I found really rewarding, exciting, competitive, just a great atmosphere. There's great days, there's tough days, and it's something I really embraced. And I've been fortunate to coach there still. And that's why I fell into coaching a little bit.
Yeah, when you see people, groups, universities that have a strong culture and that strong community, it's so cool to see. And I know, we've been part, and Wayne State's really grown a lot over the years in building that. It sounds like you also had some really cool coaches and really good mentors in your life, as I have. How, thinking back, like, how does your mentality change going from a player to a coach? And when you think back, it's really easy for players, just like employees, to get critical of their leadership, their bosses. Talk a little bit about your perspective now that you've transitioned.
Sure. So usually when you're a player, a student athlete, an employee, you follow the agenda, and you might not think about the vision of what that agenda is looking for in a result. And you do your work, you do your job. As a baseball player, you're going to a practice or a training or a workout or a meeting, and you're maybe focused on a couple of action items, whether it's maybe you're hitting in that certain moment and you got an hour of offensive work, or you're working on base running for half an hour, you're doing base running, and you're maybe thinking about other things. You're thinking about, when's this practice going to be over? I'm sure getting hungry right now. What am I going to eat for dinner tonight? You might have some small distractions, but it's okay. That's human behavior. And I think when you're talking about some of those transition things, the mental side, for me, I was probably more physical as a player and a student athlete. I did my job physically. I had a little bit of mental scenario, but going into coaching, that was probably one of the biggest things I had to do, was to maybe teach more mental makeup versus the physical. Because if you get to the college level, or you get to a high level of business or success, you've probably got some skill set that has set you apart. But where is the mental side going to come into play? And so teaching things like visualization, focus, concentration, embracing and striving in a moment, those are things that probably have moved more into the coaching realm for me, if that's kind of answering your question a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know for me, the vision and you seeing the big picture once you get into a leadership role, and almost having to set the vision as opposed to just fitting into, a vision someone else created or kind of handed down to you, has been a challenge for me, and a real growth opportunity to be the one that's really kind of setting the vision
Right.
for the team. Know you got a lot of passion for Detroit. Obviously, you're from Detroit. Other than some of those stories you told, any real big whys behind your passion for the D?
Yeah. I usually don't talk about myself a whole lot, and that's actually part of my probably philosophy a little bit. And but it's a unique story. I talk about my family and giving me an opportunity to grow as a student, an athlete, an individual, and without my parents, they had I had grandparents, and Detroit went through such a pinnacle point in history during kind of the Industrial Revolution. And when the auto industry came into play, I had family entrenched in the auto industry, as did many Michiganders or people from our region. And my family, my name is Ryan Patrick Kelley. My family migrated from Ireland looking for work. My father was the first one of the Kelleys born in America, and so I was the second. So we're not that far removed from coming across the waters, but they came across essentially looking for a better life. My great grandparents, that is, and they found their footings in Canada, and then not finding much employment at the time, made their way to Detroit, and that was because of the auto industry. And Detroit gave my family an opportunity to make a living in a society that gave them an opportunity. And my grandfather, eventually, he was born in Canada, and he eventually followed his father, my great grandfather, to Detroit. And he worked for General Motors for 46 years, pretty much had the same job. He was a hammer press operator. Basically, just pounded steel as part of his job for the entire duration of his career. He went to World War II. He was part of the Arsenal Democracy through that Detroit era. And if Detroit didn't give the Kelley family an opportunity then, and led to my dad ultimately going to Wayne State, getting an education, and then ultimately led to me having an opportunity to be a college baseball coach within the NCAA. So that's a personal thing for me, is I feel obligated and a responsibility to the city. And so that's why I'm very passionate about Detroit and in a personal regard, but I'm a huge fan of the city. I really believe in where the city is, where it's been. I understand the positives, the struggles, the challenges, but I think it makes the city a unique scenario of hard work, dedication, commitment, overcoming adversity, going through struggles, and ultimately continue to move forward as one of the true great American stories.
What cool perspective, man. That I can just hear the gratitude in your voice thinking back, and I have a soft spot for Detroit. I think it's such a cool city, and it's been really neat to see how it's grown since my time at Wayne, and it was even up and coming, sort of back then. So, really cool to see, and interesting too, now that we're into a more dynamic time with this pandemic and some of these protests and things going on. It'll be cool to see where Detroit goes and how we withstand some of these challenges here in the near term.
Indeed.
What is one of the toughest challenges that you've had to face as a coach? Can you remember one or two specific things where you were really challenged or something caught you off guard?
Yeah. When you're a head coach in the college level, or you're some type of administrator or a supervisor, you're going to have challenges, not just sometimes, but all the time. Every day you got some form of a challenge. When you're a part of a team that's embraces the word culture, and there's a unity and there's a camaraderie, a chemistry. I think about one story, a teammate of yours, JJ Shenik. This was a challenge at the time. This is something I did not experience yet, but as a coach, JJ Shenik, member of the Wayne State baseball team, was diagnosed with a form of cancer. And we're like in the middle of our academic year, and we're not that far out from the college baseball season, if I recall. And JJ was diagnosed with, a form of cancer, and we had to address that and talk about that with the team. And when you have someone that's when you're a part of a tight knit culture community, if there is a serious challenge when it comes to that, you're going to have a lot of emotions and anxieties, stressors. What can I do? Things come up. And that was a challenge when we first heard the news. but the challenge turned into a great memory. I can remember, and JJ Shennick, survived, beat it. He's been doing very well, as we know. And but when we had that challenge, I remember talking with JJ about it. And usually a leader takes the me factor out of it. And JJ, I remember when we had to address the team in person, it was a tough time for JJ, but it was tough because he was more worried about his teammates than himself. Mm-hmm. And that turned into a real positive for me, because I could see the understanding of when you're a part of something bigger than just yourself, when others are impacted. He was fully aware that he was going to go after this thing and take down the animal, which he did. And the challenge turned into a real positive. And I think it continued to build our unity and our chemistry. And he turned out to be a great example for the student athletes, the coaches, the teachers, the community, in that time frame of Wayne State history.
Yeah, that's a very challenging time. And I know from the good leaders I've seen that selfless approach to leadership, leadership's the service mentality of, you're not here to dictate to others, but to serve them. And it's all about that team. And luckily, we had the opportunity to be a part of some really cool championship teams. And I really just think that, especially when you encounter things like JJ did, it puts everything in perspective. Mm-hmm. All the baseball, all the school, and the 9:30 p.m. practices till 2 a.m. at the Math Eye. And speaking of some of those practices and morning lifts and things, after I left university, I realized some of the daily habits that I had built that I negligently let myself lose a couple years out of school. And now I'm thinking back, and I really value those. I really value a lot of those habits that were instilled in us. And I'm curious if you have daily habits that really have benefited you, or anything, morning rituals, how do habits resonate with you on your path to success?
It's a good question. Definitely coffee. Gotta have morning coffee. That's a ritual. But I don't know if there's any specific habits versus, ideals. Consistency, I think of just trying to stay consistent every day with what I'm working on. Communication is significant. That is definitely a process, but also a habit. When you're in a leadership position, you got to have communication to be able to maybe delegate information, talk about information, but also gather and listen to information. And in today's age, there's so many forms of communication that you really got to be on top of it. So, a standard phone call, a text message, some type of electronic communication, especially when you're in a university forum, you've got various forms of online protocol, whether it's a standard email or working through a university system. So you got to be on top of it, especially when you have people counting on you to be able to understand what's going on and get that information out. So communication's a big time daily ritual, habit, consistency, and so forth. One of my favorite 4-letter words in the English language is the word work. And that is definitely a habit every day. I enjoy to work. As I talked about in my history a little bit, we were built on the word work a little bit within my family, and I know the city of Detroit the same way, and Wayne State University is the same way. It was built upon some serious work, and there's different ways to go about doing work, but it's something that I take pride in doing every day. So kind of in a nutshell, wake up, have that coffee, and stay consistent in communication and keep working. And I tell you, when you're in a leadership position, even if you're going on vacation and so forth, that still kind of stays consistent, especially when people are counting on you. But at some point, I did have a professor talk about this in one of my master's classes, and he said it's okay to take a 10-minute vacation every now and then. And so if you got to take a 10-minute walk or just get up from your desk and recover mentally in a brief time, that's something I think is also part of a habit that I've developed. In a competitive environment, you might have had a bad call on the field by an umpire, or maybe we had a rough inning or something. Sometimes you got to take a mental break and recover and move on to win the next moment. And so those are some of the habits that I do.
Man, I love that. I love the hard work. When I hear hard work, I know that definitely rings in my head that RK is one of those hard work guys. And I thought criteria was going to come up somewhere in there.
I had a text message on that last night with one of your teammates.
There you go. Yeah, I love that. Thinking about high school athletes, what can they be doing to prepare for collegiate athletics and college in general?
Awesome question. I get that question a lot, actually. And the word that I usually, the one word answer is everything. If you want to advance in sport, and this can resonate in other entities beyond sport. If you want to achieve and get to the highest level possible, you got to work to be the best at it. And if you're going to be a student athlete at the high school level and you have aspirations to get to the college level, or maybe even professional if you're lucky, you got to keep working at everything. And it's working on your game, your skill set, your physical attributes, strength and conditioning, physical therapy, your mental attributes, having a sound mind, understanding how to make adjustments, overcome adversity, and deal with challenges, being a member of a team, be the best teammate you can be. And definitely without question, I mean, I always talk about this, and I know you're familiar with it, but at the high school level, don't take academics for granted. Do the very best you can, create a great foundation, and build those resources with your teachers and your counselors. Because when a college coach or a university official is going to look at a transcript, that's powerful. It really can be. And that's why I say everything.
Yeah.
Work at everything. And continue to grow.
I like that philosophy. And that really resonates with me in the business world. And I can see why they have this perspective. They talk about being really good at one thing. And especially when you're young, and Gary Vee kind of talks about this, that's the time to make mistakes and try new things. And I really think going for everything and all the way when you're younger is the time to do it. And, if you got that one thing you're really driven for, then sure, go for that. But I like the diversity. I like the well-roundedness. And I think it's so important. And you mentioned earlier your history with speaking and being a color commentator. You're a great speaker. That's something I'm a little passionate about because my parents used to force me to do speech competitions and things when I was a young kid, and I hated it at the time, but now I love it because it's really helped me in my career and in my life. And how has speaking and your color commentary experience helped you? And do you think that's an area that maybe isn't focused on enough by the younger generation?
Absolutely. I mean, geez, I can remember taking middle school, high school classes, and it might be just one speech class for the year. And I know what it's like to be in those shoes and be really nervous and unsettled. And even though you prepare like crazy, you still have to speak and present in front of an audience. And that's an obstacle. That's something you got to work at and you got to train at and get experience at. So just like you mentioned, I think that is a skill set that everyone can utilize. And whether, you're a boss, you're a supervisor, you're a coach, you work at the front desk of a hotel, everyone's got to communicate effectively. And that's such a powerful tool to have. And I think if there's some youngsters that are going to listen to this, like you're asking about the high school students, keep working at it. Because eventually you're going to have to help someone make a decision for you. And if you can present yourself to a college coach, to someone that's looking to hire you for a summer job, a future full-time job, you've got to be able to articulate with some confidence during an interview or during a meeting, whether it's on the phone, in person, on a Zoom call. You have got to be able to articulate. And I think part of the communication piece, not only just articulating words, is your body language. So having great body language, and that's something you can practice all the time. You can do it in front of a mirror. You can practice the way you walk to class. You can practice the way you walk to your car, practice the way you walk to the grocery store. And you have body language that can resonate, some things about you. Are you having a good day? Are you having a bad day? Things like that. So
yeah, 90% of what you're saying isn't coming out of your mouth, So I like that a lot. I know as I think about some of my most challenging public speaking times, it wasn't the time I had to get up in front of a bunch of people and give a prepared speech. It was that time with the team where you had to get up, you knew something needed to be said, and you're putting yourself out there, and it's not comfortable to do. And it happens not only in team environments, but in, walks of life, in your churches and your communities. And putting yourself out there is hard, and getting up and speaking in front of people is hard. But I agree, you got to practice it. It's a skill.
You're right. There's times there's going to be very easy to speak about certain things.
Sure.
But you got to speak when it's tough too. Well,
and I think we easily look at some of these higher ups in business and in our communities, and they're up speaking, and you're like, oh, they're so good at it. They look, that must come naturally to them. And to your point, I don't think it does at all. They've practiced, and they're extremely prepared. So that's so important, that preparation in everything, not only speaking, but in baseball and in school and everything. Know you're a husband and a father. How has the transition to fatherhood impacted your mentality as a leader, if at all?
Wow. You've used the word a few times, in perspective, and that's probably been maybe one of the most significant pieces of being a father. I got two daughters, and the perspective piece of it is that I can remember being a younger coach before I was a father, and maybe some things would really eat me up competitively. Maybe it was a rough game. Maybe something didn't go the way we were hoping for. And in the big picture, that might not be the message we're trying to teach all the time, is not just losing a game, winning a game. That's part of the process to becoming successful in life. And so, there was times I might have got fired up younger as a coach with umpires and so forth. But sometimes I might think back a little bit, you know what, let's just win the next pitch. And being a father has helped with that transition to some extent, because, you might have a bad day. Things might not, I don't necessarily feel like I have a bad day, but some things might not go good. But come home after maybe a tough loss and stuff like that, that part of being a father is great. And also the other perspective piece on being a father, I've seen how kids are impacted by student athletes. And so my girls, we have not made a trip to Disney World or anything like that yet, but they feel Wayne State is like Disney World. And
cool.
and it's more so because of the players, and so they love the Wayne State baseball players. They think they are the greatest people on the planet.
Right.
And credit to the Wayne State baseball team, some of the previous players and current guys, for welcoming them in that regard. And it kind of just gives another perspective on, like, if you are a student athlete at the college level, how important and valuable that is, because you are viewed, whether it's a role model or just someone that a kid looks up to you on. I've noticed that. And we've hosted a lot of great camps over the years that you've participated with, and we've seen a lot of kids come through our doors in Detroit at Wayne State. And you can really sense, and I get great feedback from families and parents, like how impactful the college baseball student athletes are in those environments. And that's something as a parent and a father, you realize when you see your kids impacted by young adults.
That is so cool. That's something I'm passionate about right now, because you never know who is going to be impacted by something you do. And something as simple as just being a student athlete, it could have an impact. You speaking to some kid could have a huge impact on their life, and you just don't know.
Yep.
And I think for a lot of years, I took that for granted through my career, that, you think you're just going about your stuff and you're worried about your classes and doing you, and you don't realize how you have an impact on the world around you. And, you find out about it later through your network, through as your relationships grow and you build relationships with people. What is WSU up to these days? What's going on in the baseball world? Talk a little bit about the season. Obviously, it's been a unique year with the pandemic. What are you doing to keep the guys motivated, and what's going on at WSU baseball?
We were really looking forward to this year. One, we were off to a good start. I think our record was 11-4, if I'm not mistaken exactly on it. But we finished playing in March. But this was actually year 80 of Wayne State baseball. So this was our 80th season of Wayne State baseball in the green and gold. So it was kind of a good anniversary year for us historically. I remember we were at a team dinner. We were on our Florida spring break. We're at a team dinner at a restaurant. And that's when the news was all over the TVs and the phones, when the NBA was one of the first sport organizations in America to kind of shut down and cancel or
right.
And so forth. We were all in the restaurant there, and we're sitting there thinking we got a game tomorrow, the next day, and thinking about, how is this going to evolve? And the reality didn't really set in, like things were going to start canceling. And ultimately it did in a really short period of time. Then the NCAA followed suit. We're in Florida. And unfortunately we prepared the team, and we all kind of had our thoughts on it. Something might happen, but we were continuing to prepare that we're going to finish our trip, play our games, and do what we have to do. But then the NCAA came out and we shut down. And unfortunately, we weren't all together in that moment when that decision came. So we ended up having a team meeting once we got everyone back at the hotel site where we're located, like 2 or 3 hours later. And that was tough. That was a tough time. Some guys obviously understand the scenario. Seniors were kind of like, what's going on? This might be it. And so that was a immediate topic. We got back to Detroit as fast as possible. And the last time I saw the team collectively as a unit was on the John C. Lodge service drive at like 3 a.m. on a bus dropped us off at the Math Eye. And we actually had to do some quarantine things at that time. And the guys got in their cars and took their equipment, and that's the last time I've seen them in person.
Wow.
And but as we streamlined through that process a little bit, and all the information started becoming prevalent, we obviously found out that we're in a game that's bigger than baseball, and we have to do our part with the social distance thing, staying safe, using good judgment. And so I credit the guys on being responsible, and but I really was proud of them, because we just finished our winter semester not that long ago. We ended up getting I don't have the exact data in front of me, but it's like right around a 3.5 term GPA as a team.
Awesome.
The guys really they had something to win. They weren't playing the game at that moment, but they could at least continue to compete academically, and they did a great job. The athletic department as a whole did a tremendous job. And so the motivation piece, it's just, I think the thing that we did as a staff is we just stayed consistent in our communication, like we talked about earlier. We didn't change up. We just stayed as consistent as we do as a team. So our phone calls, our team text almost every day, individual calls when needed. And we stayed true to that process, and it's remained prevalent. I would credit the guys. They did a good job. Obviously, when you're a teammate, you have a responsibility as a teammate to look out for your teammates too. So just not coaches or a supervisor telling you what to do. You got to be a good and effective teammate and make sure your teammates are doing okay. So they did a good job with that as well.
This is definitely one of those situations where the phrase "control what you can control" comes to mind. And I don't know if I've been through a situation where it seems like more out of our control what's going on, but yeah, I think that consistent communication is key. I think so many leaders miss that, and maybe either err on the side of over communicating, which sometimes can be bad, or they don't communicate enough where it creates all this uncertainty and questioning, and people's minds can start to wander of what might be going on. And, I know when we were at Wayne, lots of opportunities to give back to the community kind of leading up to this pandemic. And, I know once we get back to some state of normal, we'll do that forward. What's WSU been doing, giving back to the community in Detroit and WSU baseball specifically?
If you visit our athletic website, there's definitely some recent features on the student athletes from this year. I think we end up finishing as a student athlete community, about 400 strong of us, give or take. And we finished second in the country at the NCAA Division II level with community service hours.
Oh, wow.
That might be one of the highest rankings we've ever had. We've always done, and even when you were a student athlete, it's always been a powerful piece of our athletic department fabric, team fabric, philosophy. If you have an opportunity to be a college student athlete, it's an amazing opportunity. But as you know, if you're gonna have a good opportunity, responsibility comes with it. And we talked about how it impacts kids and so forth. So we've done a lot of community service, and our team specifically with baseball, we did. I want to say we were about 800 community service hours this year. We probably would have had over 1,000 if we didn't have the pandemic.
Wow.
But our guys helped raise. We haven't talked about it publicly or had any features on it, but our guys helped raise $40,000 towards direct cancer patient care for the Henry Ford Health System this year. That's basically, they volunteered their Sundays and went to Ford Field.
Wow.
They sold 50-50 at all the Lions games. And all of that went to direct cancer patient care with Henry Ford Health System through various NFL charities and the Detroit Lions charities. And Christian Bilkovic helped set that up with us a couple of years ago.
Awesome.
One of
Very cool.
our former alums. And so not only did we volunteer hours, that we went to elementary schools and we've done things like that, but some of it could make at least a financial impact for people in need as well. So we did that, and we're proud of that. And on top of having a good record and doing well in school this year, that we're really proud of the team and what we've been going through ever since we reported back at the beginning of the school year and where we are now.
Man, that's awesome. Very cool. Well, RK, it's been great talking to you. Great catching up. Before we go, tell us a little bit about how we as alumni can do a good job of plugging in and helping out and giving back to Wayne State during this time, and how else we can help the community.
Well, as a former student athlete, your time, as a Wayne State Tartar or Warrior, maybe 4 years, but those 4 years are with you forever, and it's on your resume. It's in your pride. It's on your hat like you're wearing right now.
There you go.
And in order for us to continue to develop and build future leaders, we obviously need alumni support. And I think there's so many different ways to help. There really are. Just showing up to a game, stopping by a practice, coming back to the alma mater like you've done on occasion, even though you're not a Michigan resident anymore. Just swinging by, just being visible. I just think a tremendous leadership move, because the current players see that. They see when alumni walk in and they they'll think to themselves, must have been a pretty important time for that student or that former player to stop by and see what's going on.
Right.
And I think that's important for our current players to see when our alumni are visible. And obviously, with uncertain budget cuts that we're probably going to experience once things become official through the pandemic, financial contributions are going to be pinnacle for us. And it's not the best time to give, but we generated the Lend a Hand campaign with the athletic department. It's like $5 a month is something that can make a big impact. And if we had a lot of alumni come out and an army of names supporting the current and future student athletes, I just think that it continues to fuel, obviously, what we're trying to do, but also identifies with the current players, like how powerful it is for alumni to give back, and it gives them a sense of responsibility. They got to continue to abide by the missions that we're trying to accomplish. So giving back in whatever form it might be. Maybe even if you have a job open up in your network, like let us know about it. We're going to have future current players looking for jobs, looking at a resume, so many ways. So ultimately, staying connected. If you can stay connected with us, that's very impactful. And once a teammate, always a teammate. I think it's great when alumni that were teammates stay in touch and maybe fuel ideas together. Bowling Green baseball is a great example right now. I don't know if you saw it or not, but the university had to make a tough decision not that long ago to eliminate the sport of baseball at Bowling Green State University in Ohio. And the alumni came together as a team, and they created pledges, and ultimately Bowling Green, through the alumni representation with the president and the athletic director and the administration there, they're going to have baseball again.
Wow.
The alumni saved their sport, and that just went effective the last couple of days. It just shows the power of being a part of a team and continue to be a part of a team. I feel with Wayne State baseball, being the head coach, if you had a 400 batting average, or maybe didn't play a lot, maybe you were in the 2000 plus era when things were maybe a little bit better than the 1960s, 70s era. We've got Harwell Field now, and some upgraded facilities, probably more scholarship opportunities. Regardless, you were a Tartar or a Warrior, and you were a part of it. And whatever we can do to help alumni as well, that we want to be able to help build network, connect, and just continue with the team approach.
Man, I love it, RK. Awesome criteria. Name on the front, as always.
Yes.
And great having you on the show, man. I'm glad to see what you're doing. Awesome to see where you've taken that Wayne State Warrior baseball team, and excited to see where it goes going forward.
Phil, you're one of the best leaders that have put on the green and gold. I know your teammates think really highly of you, and excited to see the things you're doing and continue your passion for success. I know we didn't even talk about engineering, but all the stuff you've done in the professional world, but your vision moving forward. Keep up the great work. Keep being a tremendous leader. And thanks for all your support.
Appreciate it, RK. Take care, man.
All right, Phil.